When hosting your show for ABC, it was 90 minutes in duration, 5 nights a week. You must have been under tremendous pressure to keep up the quality, of course, and I'm sure that you and your staff had to do tons of show prep. Johnny Carson couldn't continue with that schedule. I mean, what was that like? That was really a grind.
That's interesting. It never seemed long, except once or twice when once Nora Ephron and I had to do it almost an hour when a very famous actor got sick of being backstage and not being the first guest out and went home. And Nora and I had run out 2 segments earlier of what we wanted to. I love Nora. And we just looked at each other and kept talking about something. I don't know how we did it and got through that show. Every time I looked at the clock, the hands had been welded at the same time. And he's dead now, and so I won't, because I'm always told you're not supposed to speak ill of the dead. One of the dumbest statements ever made. If Dr. Goebbels comes up, I'll think of something nice to say about him. But his initials were Nicol Williamson.
Do you have any favorite current television talk show hosts?
Are you kidding? The funny part is I know them all, and so it's very undiplomatic of me to try to speak of all of them at the same time, or any of them, because the one I hate might find out. No, I don't hate the man. Life is too short for hate. Richard Nixon. The son of a bitch went on for years as a criminal, and it was interesting what Bob Woodward, Carl Bernstein pointed out that you saw for a moment. The minute the re-election was, the tapes show that instead of saying, isn't it great, and we won, we got to remember to thank so-and-so, he and I guess Agnew and Haldeman all sat there deciding whom they could get revenge upon. How are we going to ruin this guy's business? How can we screw this son of a bitch? And that was our president. We had 2 crooks in the 2 top positions. Spiro Agnew was on my show and was, if not the dullest guest I ever had, very close in the contest. And all this vile stuff comes out on the very first day. And when he asks on the tapes, is Cavett a Jew? I had to laugh. What a lovely guy.
Dick, we have at least a dozen college students with us today who are contemplating and preparing for careers in broadcasting. Care to pass on any advice to these young prospects?
Yes, and I just evolved it about 3 weeks ago. I got sick, finally, forever, of young people being told, hitch your wagon to a star, and if you want something bad enough and it's your passion, you work as hard as you can. Don't let anything distract you. Dedicate yourself to that goal, and you will succeed like hell. Why disappoint them? Probably they aren't any good and don't have any talent.
Well, thanks for keeping it upbeat.
Thank you. But you know, what a dumb thing to say. There was a year in our history when 40,000 women wanted to become great movie stars, and Katharine Hepburn did. And that idea that hard work will get you something that requires skyrocketing talent is just kind of silly. But the nice silver lining to this is I met these students beforehand, and they're going to make it.
You hear that? Okay.
Well, except for the guy who looks like me.
Tell us about your new book, Brief Encounters.
Brief Encounters. Oh, look, perchance, here's a copy. It looks something like this. It's 75 or so of my New York Times online columns that I've written for years. And the subject matter ranges from the craziness of dreams is the first piece. Who writes our dreams? Because they surprise us. Who's the author of them? Maddening. To meeting Stan Laurel the most unlikely celebrity meeting I could ever have conceived of. How do you meet Stan Laurel? Not the way Chuck did, but copy boy at time. I put a folder back that some writer asked me to file, and next to it was a folder that said Laurel Stan. My first thought, oddly, was I didn't know he was still alive. Now, this would have been way before I worked for Jack Paar, probably 1960. And I saw in it that he was alive and, in fact, lived in Santa Monica and was in the phone book. And when I went out there a year later with Jack Paar, becoming a writer for Jack, I had dropped Mr. Laurel a note, and he said, "Why don't you come visit?" That's the only time in my life that I've been ready, hair combed, and ready to go 2 hours before I needed to drive to Santa Monica. Went to the Oceana Apartments. He had a 2.5 room little nice apartment over the sea. Neither of the boys got residuals, as you know, for their films that sold billions of dollars worth of shoe polish and cars and stuff. I thought the desk guy was a little too unreverent when I said, "I'm here to see Mr. Laurel." And he said, 204, go on. And I thought, yeah. Tapped on the door. Door opened. A man taller than I expected, and a white shirt and tie, nicely dressed for visitors, you know. And I just thought, when that door opens, just before it did, the time in my life when I haven't met Stan Laurel will end. He was a little heavier in features than he was, but I recognized the ears. He didn't talk like Stan on the screen, but he did have the same bilateral sibilance that you saw Chuck do. And he said, "Well, lad, it certainly is nice to meet you." And I nearly peed.
And you'll sign
I
copies
did just
of your
now
book.
when I told it. Well, we spent 3 hours together, and it was, you take this the right way, it wasn't like when I met Hepburn and Brando and Orson Welles and all the people that I was, of as a kid, and here I am with them, and how did this happen? This was like meeting Donald Duck, or by that I mean a figure outside of just movie stars. This was like meeting someone out of a famous painting or cartoon. And he was so gentlemanly and so intelligent and so well-spoken, and in a lower voice than the one which was more up here on the screen. Can you take some more of this? He handed me a 2-page handwritten letter. Beautiful handwriting in a kind of purple maroon ink, elegant hand. I've always admired, and I must say had great affection for your work, and on, 2 pages of praise. Came to the end, and the last line I remember almost exact was, "And I must add that I have always, in so many ways, tried to emulate you in my work." It was from an actor, and it was signed Alec Guinness. And he treasured that, yeah. He said, they chopped the films up so badly and they wrecked the gags. And he said, I offered to come in and re-edit them for television. I wasn't going to charge anything, he said, but they never bothered to answer my letter. But he was not some 14-year-old something, perhaps. Some old fart wants to come in and... But he was not bitter. And I said, may I ask about the rumors that you and Hardy don't speak? And he said, Babe and I were always friends. And he told about going on Christmas Day to Babe Hardy's house, his smallish apartment, I guess. And he had a present for him, but it was clear that Babe had not gotten Stan a present. And he said, so we stood for kind of an awkward moment by the Christmas tree, and then Babe looked down, and there were some gift bottles of wine and liquor, and he reached down, and he took a nice, beautiful bottle of a very expensive bourbon and held it out and said, and saw that it really was a great bottle of bourbon. It's very hard to find this one in Los Angeles and put it back down on the...
Thanks for joining us. You know, I can already feel the excitement building for our next Hollywood Media Professional Celebrity Showcase.